So hi, hello, Hongchan.
Hi, JB.
It's good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on this interview. So you are the technical leader of the web audio team at Google Chrome, and you're also the tech lead for W3C to lead the the specifications of web audio. So can you tell a little bit more about yourself, your background, and also about web audio and how it started?
I'm a tech lead of Chrome Web Audio team. Uh, for specification work, I think my position there is a spec editor of a web audio API, and I've been working on web audio in Chrome team for 7 years, almost 7 years now. I came from South Korea like 10 years ago to US to study computer music. But before that, I I also had my professional career as a musician in South Korea, and I taught in universities, like music technology and computer music and other stuff. And before that, I wasn't really into the programming itself. I was more focused on creating like experimental artwork with the Max MSP. I I wrote like two books on Max MSP Jitter in Korean. So they are not available in English, but there you can get it from Korea. So I wasn't really hardcore programmer like using C++ or C, but when I got into my doctoral program in university in US, I focused on like programming because I thought that was the future of my. If you want to do some serious work, you have to learn those things, like build your application. That was my focus at that point. But that led to the other gigs. Like eventually, I landed on internship at Google. It was a great opportunity for me to work with Chris Rogers himself because he was the father of WebAudio API. So I did my internship with him, and it was a really like amazing opportunity to learn from the master. And then I got into Google as a full-time engineer to work on WebAudio API. I can talk a little bit about my involvement in early days of web audio. I think the effort started from 2010 actually, and it was the first. I think the first pioneer of web audio was actually his name is Chris Rogers. He was originally engineer at Apple, and then he moved to Google. And then he started this project called Web Audio API within Google, and that effort led to a formation of a W3C audio working group, and he got more supporters and collaborators from different companies like BBC and Mozilla and Microsoft and Dolby, and they also joined the effort at some point of the time. And so, yeah, it was kind of a very collective effort from multiple companies. And I know that there were some interesting discussion between like fiery discussion between Google and Mozilla in the early days of web audio because we had a like widely different point of view on how web audio API should be designed for the web. But in the end, the proposal made by Google actually advanced. So now what we use today is actually the original design. It's based on original design the Chris Rogers made. Oftentimes we get questions like what this API is for, who this API is for. And it was really hard to answer if you ask me, but there was a big problem in the audio world of HTML5 because before the time of the HTML5 there was something called Flash. Flash was powerful enough for any kind of audio visual interactive programming for the web, but it has some problem with the security and other stuff. So we had to get rid of it. Now we don't have anything to implement like interactive audio because no Flash. So we had to fill those gaps. I think that was the first like purpose of this API. And what we had at the time was something called HTML media element. And HTML media element has two parts, which is HTML audio element, HTML video element. But that functionality is to just stream and playback a static file. So if you try to implement something more interactive, like a game or a musical instrument or sound editor, this audio element does not work actually there. So we had to something more programmable, and something you can actually interact, something with the low latency, and uh, something you can actually program in a scalable way on the client side. So that's I think that's the main reason of existence of Web Audio API.
I suppose, yeah. One of the questions I have is around the obstacles that there were um, over the years. I mean, even today, it appears that web audio is not fully implemented everywhere on all platforms. So it's not
Mm,
yet supported in all browsers, maybe not in the same way, but it came a very long way. So what was the obstacles that you had to solve at the beginning,
mm.
and then which one are still to solve today?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the biggest obstacle in Web Audio API development is basically building a consensus between different stakeholders. Basically, sometimes it's really hard to get someone, how to get on someone's endorsement or an agreement on a technical issue, and maybe that's why some of the browser implementer doesn't really show up on the discussion anymore. So what I can tell you is it has been mostly us, Chrome, and Mozilla, the Firefox. So we've been driving this for a while. Um, so what I can say is the compatibility between Firefox and Chrome is, I think they are okay. They are okay level, but some other implementations might be a little bit outdated because there has been some changes, recent addition to the specification, and if you don't come to discussion, it's really hard to follow up. So you have to you I think you get to just like be outdated somehow. So there's a document phase, W3C document phase. So there's a life cycle of a W3C specification, and we have been editor's draft phase for a while, and now we are getting really, really close to something called recommendation. Recommendation is the final stage of a spec document developed under W3C umbrella. So what it means is we are almost close to the end of this work, and I can see that the other browser vendor that I've been talking about is finally actually catching up some of those recent addition and updates to the spec. So I actually saw a tweet yesterday, and Safari is finally shipping the audio worklet, which is a really powerful feature, most recent addition to the spec. And also, they actually are dropping something called a prefixed version of audio context. So actually, you can use the more modernized web audio API. So that's a good news, right? So I think when we pass the point of a version one recommendation phase, uh, this compatibility will become much more important for all the browser vendors. So they will make some effort to make their implementation up to date. So with my like musician slash teacher hat on, um, a most recent one was something called Beatport. I'm not sure you're familiar with the name. I think they're pretty influential in the DJ world, and they recently released the app called Beatport DJ, which actually runs inside of a browser. And I mean, if you're familiar with the DJ tool like a Tractor or other software-based DJing tool, this just looks like it. So it was very surprising for me to it was really surprising to see such of like a fluidity, like really like speedy and snappy action on the web app. it was really pleasing to see, and that's one of the great example, most recent example that I've seen. And the other one, maybe I should talk about Ableton's learning music and learning synth project. It's just amazing. It's a really, really well made. The level of refinement and the polishness of the app is just amazing. So I think it's a stellar example of what the web audio API, what web audio app can be. And I use it all the time when I actually when I need to teach the basics of music making or sound synthesis to students in the classroom setting. It's a really great example. Right.
I'm also very curious, to explain the differences that still exist probably between um, what you can do on a web browser
Mm,
and what you can do on a native operating system.
mm,
And there's a huge appetite, I'm sure, from companies and artists to, instead of building applications, mobile apps, or native software, to use the web, because the web is so easy to use. And if you wanted to have like a reactive environment, like you mentioned Ableton Learning Synth
mm,
website, um, you know many artists probably would be very happy to imagine interactive audio spaces, but it's still probably there's still probably some differences. What are the differences that still exist between web audio in a browser and audio uh, in a native environment on an operating system?
mm. Let me talk about the difference first, then I talk about the other stuff. I think this is a really interesting question that I wanted to talk about. So the difference is web browser is very isolated. It's a kind of safety sandboxed environment. So you're not gonna get direct access to users' hardware or local resources. For example, files on hard drive. It's really you have to go through a couple more steps to access those files on your hard drive through the web browser. Because if that's possible, like really easy, then it's going to be a problem, right? Because then any kind of web page, just by clicking some buttons, the page will access files on your hard drive. That's not good. So in terms of accessing local resources like hardware and file system, web browser is kind of sandboxed. It's more, I think it's more kind of safer that way. But if you come from the native programming background, this might be a big frustration for you. Wow, I cannot use file on my application. What does it mean even? So it's kind of that situation. But in the end, I think mobile apps, native apps is kind of a very traditional, but mobile apps actually is their own guideline and principle in terms of using client side resources. So you might actually have to go through the similar stuff when you work on the mobile apps. I think that's the direction that we are kind of heading into in every platform. I mean, if you look at the recent changes that have been happening in the macOS side, I mean, they're locking up more features so native app actually can access the local system. Like, I mean, you've seen this a lot of time, right? If your native application try to access microphone or camera or like GPS on your laptop, then you're gonna see a little notification on top. Hey, this app is trying to do this. What do you want to do, right? That that didn't exist before. But thing is, even the native platform is trying to lock down those free access to the local resources. I think it's coming. So I don't know. It seems like a native and mobile apps is kind of trying to follow the guideline and principle and restriction that web had before. So I'm not sure what's the future direction, but this is clearly a trend. We want to protect users' privacy and user security. I don't think web audio API is a perfect or like complete replacement of a native audio platform. I think we should coexist because it is ideal for a different type of audiences, right? Like you pointed out in your question, Ableton's work, learning synths, learning music, they're not like full-fledged music making tool, right? It's more of a combination, mixture of a instruction and some of the educational structure and some of the interactive music making functionality in one place. It's more of an interactive textbook. So the this flexibility of web can be used for many other applications. So in terms of flexibility, I think the web is better, and also as you pointed out, it has incredible reach, and it provides instant access, and most of them is kind of free. You don't have to go through the central control tower like App Store or something like that. There is no central agency who governs all the interaction. Web is a free space, right? So in that matter, I think web has some advantage and strength in different type of audience and applications. And I should native app should exist as well because I use it all the time. When I do like a serious music making, I can just throw away all of my VST instrument because I spend a lot of money on that. So it's not like a black or white. It's more of a we should coexist. And I mean, you've been leading a company before, so you know that this music software industry is consistently declining in terms of annual revenue. I usually read those reports from them, annual report, and numbers does not really look good there. So what we need to do is we need to grow the pie. So you know we need to try to reach out more people and lower the barrier. On that note, actually, we conducted a survey last year, developer and partner survey. We got more than 100 responses from all around the world, and it was very clear that people who care about web audio they want to have more access on devices because web audio API is more of a kind of a graph rendering system, so it does not really expose hardware related information like how many channels or like what kind of sample rate are you providing, or what's the latency that I can set. For example, when you have multiple audio devices connected to your laptop, then how do I choose one that I want? I think it's very natural. So that's something I really want to solve for developers. I think that's a first step to the right direction so you can build a full-fledged music making app with the web audio.
There are some very impressive applications built with web audio. Very I'm thinking of Spotify's um,
Yeah,
application, Soundtrap,
yeah,
uh,
it's
which is
amazing.
very, yeah, it's very very complete. There's BandLab as well. Um, so do you think these can be even more looking someday like a full audio workstation? Do you think they could rival the production features that you can get on with Ableton or GarageBand or Logic?
Probably there will be some difference because web audio, I mean, web browser is a sandboxed environment, so there are some performance gap to be filled. But I think our engineers are working hard to reduce the gap. So I think that what you're trying to point out is the performance gap between those two. In terms of a UX, the audio functionality itself, I think we are pretty much okay. I think we're doing okay on that side. But always developers asking the ultimate question that, but it's slow on the web, right? But I think that's all, that's kind of a it's really hard to fill those gap, but we are kind of really trying hard to reduce the gap. But on a side note, I think that kind of library is great, right? I mean, this kind of it reminds me of early days of a digital audio workstation came out. You know, so there are different breeds of DAWs like Logic Pro, Cubase, and Nuendo, and Pro Tools, and their group of people fighting each other. Hey, this is better and that is better. So that kind of rivalry is not that bad. It as long as we can keep them like less hostile, less toxic, I think it's okay. I like to mention a few little notes on BandLab and Soundtrap because you made a comparison between BandLab and Soundtrap and the Logic Pro and GarageBand. But what I see is BandLab and Soundtrap, they have a different target and different audiences. For example, Soundtrap is really built for the classroom. It's really for education. You can use it for your own music making, but even my son is using Soundtrap for their middle school choir class, and it worked great. And I mean, in terms, we're in the pandemic situation, and Soundtrap tools like a Soundtrap and BandLab, they help the classroom going. I think that's really meaningful. That's something. Uh, I mean, if you think about it, if you try to do that kind of large scale collaboration between thousands of students and like hundreds of teachers, how do you do that with the native apps, right? Can you teach like 12 years boys to learn how to use GarageBand and upload those files and edit those files after? It's not, it doesn't really work, right? It doesn't really scale. So we have to, maybe we have to change our perspective a little when we look at this kind of problem.
Well, like for people who want to get started with web audio, just to tinker as web developer, and then maybe all the way to explaining how people could join the team. How it's open source, so I suppose people can contribute to
Oh
it.
yeah.
And it'd be great to get a quick overview of like how to get started and then how to contribute.
This is the issue tracker of a web audio API, audio working groups. This is a kind of our working space. So, like I said, Web Audio API version 1 is almost reached its end of life cycle. So maybe file if you have a new ideas on um, new features, new functionality that you wanted to you want to add to the specification. Maybe you should go to version 2, and this is our working space here, to W3C Audio Working Group. And we have a version 1 Web Audio API repository, and version 2 is over here. And so if I click here, and there's an issue tracker here too. And we already have 78 open issues for version 2 of Web Audio API. So there are so many features already being discussed. But if you interested in what kind of new features are being developed, I think uh, there's a priority one. This is a high priority items for audio working group at the moment. So there are a lot of interesting things going on. So I led a web audio course at Stanford Karma. That's a computer music research facility at Stanford University. I taught this course just to make an introduction to the audio programming with the web audio API. So there are some sample code here, and this is a course website. And if you go to schedule, there are some course readers as well, and there are some educational material that I used in the classroom too. There's a reason that I actually step up as a lead of the team because I think it was like 5 years in as a full-time software engineer in Google, working on web audio. People started asking questions like, "Why do we need web audio at all?" It suddenly changed my perspective on everything that I've been working on because I was like I told you I have been like a musician slash technician for my entire professional career. But now people are asking, why are you doing that? The only solution that I could think of at that moment was I need to step up and I need to provide the justification justification to people who are not musician who does not understand the necessity of this creative and expressive space in music. So I had to actually, take some of my engineering work off just to work on these things, just to provide roadmap and planning why this is important, why working with the professional audio partners is important for Chrome and all that. So that's actually now a huge part of my work every day. So I do a lot of meetings with partners and developers, and I try to make notes of all the meetings so I can actually talk about the content of this meeting with my managers and the leadership in the Chrome team. This is important. We need to support them. That's why web audio needs to exist. So it's not fun because I don't get to hack or creating like some experimental music stuff anymore. But I think it's also extremely rewarding when I get emails from developers. Hey, this works great, thank you. And I think that's why I get to work on this, without giving up. One thing that I'd like to mention is I'm really open to discuss with anyone who are interested in developing audio apps. So if you're thinking, if you already built a really nice audio app, and if you have some questions, or if you want some feedback from me, I'm really open. You can contact me to Twitter, or you can just send me an email. Yeah.